Hi there, welcome to our channel. I'm Vic.
I'm Nick.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're NV Board Gaming. And today we're going to talk about Detective City of Angels. This is a game designed by Evan Derrick and published by Van Ryder Games. It plays up to 5. Nick is going to give a brief overview of how you play, and then we're going to give our review.
All right, welcome to the table. Set up for a game of Detective City of Angels. Well, we're kind of set up. We have the main board in front of us right now. This game is divided into roles. We have one person playing as a chisel. Think of them as a game master. And every scenario you can change who is the chisel. So right now we're going to pull out a case. This case, Blood on the Pier. It shows a difficulty, and in the contents will show characters, locations, different things that people you can question. So things that are scenario specific. So it shows on the box what it has in this case right here. And these, well, let's pull out one thing right here. We're going to pull out, let's pull out the whole thing. I'm going to try not to spoil anything here, but I now need these cards to explain the game a little bit to you. So, roles in the game. So the chisel, what they're going to do is they're going to have their own book, and they're going to have to read the story of this, the scenario that you decide to play. So they'll know everything that has happened, and obviously you're keeping that all a secret. You're actually playing against the other players, but you have to go and answer things as truthfully or as deceptively as possible, based on your strategy to win the game. So we have optimal answers. We have things that are not optimal answers. They're misleading answers. You're going to be able to decide what you want to do. But if you call in your bluff, that will give players advantages if they do call your bluff correctly. So reasons to lie, reasons not to. But the cool thing is you're reading off a script. So as far as an answer, you don't read this. You don't have to. You just read it. You don't have to like free flow lie. So I know some people aren't comfortable lying in games. That is not the case here. You can just read off the text. So the chisel is just doing that. They are basically game mastering because they're going to work off actions that the detectives select. So this is easier to explain because you have the actions you're going to pick. The chisel is simply reacting to your actions here. So you can see that you're going to have 4 actions, and you're going to move them down to do different actions. So you can do the same action as many times as you like, except I believe you can only do once per turn on the kickback. So let's go over some of these actions. Move. A detective can spend an action to move. They can move through entire districts, and those are separated by colors. So I can move, and if I were at this location here, I could move all the way over here because it is in the same district. If I wanted to move to another district, I would have to spend one action to move to a border. So this is a border color, and I wanted to get here, no problem. I'll have to spend one move action and then another move action to go somewhere in this district. So that'd be 2 move actions to get inside another district. So that is moving. Questioning, so if you're at a spot with a suspect at your location, you can do an action to say, hey, I'm going to ask a question of this person, and you have to indicate what you're going to ask them about. So there will be cards up here that you'll be ask Ben about that is questioning, as long as you're at the location with the suspect. You can search the location that you're at, and that goes for any single spot. So you're just going to search. If you're at the LA Library here at 41, you're going to go ahead and say, I'm going to search 41. And then the chisel is going to look for card 41 to see if you find anything or not. You can search the suspect. If you're at a location with a suspect, you can search them and see what happens. You can analyze. Analyze is just a $1. And kickback is receiving scratches dollars from the number of. So you're going to get the number of players is how much you're going to get. So in a 4-player game, you're going to get $4. That includes the chisel. So if you had 4 detectives and a chisel, that's $5. You can only get kickbacks at mob joints. Mob joints are highlighted here in the orange squares. Right there. So if you're at one of these places and you do kickback, you'll get the number of scratch based upon how many players you have. You also have additional actions you can do. You can spend a scratch to do these type of actions. goon, snitch, detective, officer. They're just basically you're spending money to acquire more knowledge. You can do it with the other detectives if they're at their location. You can try to snoop in on other people's answers when they ask questions. That is the whole point of money, being able to do these special actions. So we're going to play a number of rounds based on the players. This shows how many detectives. So in a 5-player game, that means there's 4 detectives. That means we're going to start on day 7 and move down. By the end, if it has been solved, we have a final guess. So all detectives will submit their final guess of what happened. You have to, let me show you what the detectives have here. They have this sheet of paper. They're writing down all the information they've gotten from suspects and these case cards that show up over here, and you're going to write down information you have. And then if you spend an action to solve, you're going to write that down here. If we get to the final guess, you're going to write it down here. So you can see there's 3 things. You need to get all 3 things right. The suspect card and name, the weapon card and name, and then the motive. Okay? Often there are different motives, so it will be pretty reasonable, like, okay, this one makes sense and this one makes sense, and it will say that you can answer either or. And more difficult ones, maybe there's only a single motive, and you have to have the exact one correct. So this is what we're going to work off as detectives. Obviously, the first one, to get it correct, all 3 will win the game. If no one gets it correct, even after the final guess, the chisel will be the winner of the game. Really quickly, I'm going to show you a couple things here. These will be the standees that will indicate where people are, so you don't have to just envision where they might have been or try to remember. These standees will be out, and it will tell you when to put those out. Often they're put out in the initial story. So when the chisel at the beginning, when they read all the details of what actually happened in the case, after that, they're going to meet with everyone at the table and then read them the story. Or if you have the Foreteller app and paid for that, you can have a voice actor read the story to the detectives, whatever you prefer. So these will come out based on the scenario. Here's all the money that we're using. There's cardboard tokens here. This is going to be the scratch. And I want to show you real quickly what the chisel is looking at. So this is kind of what you're seeing. So you have those case cards. All this lines up with all this. So you can see the letters and all that. And then you have the suspects over here at the left. And you're just kind of looking, like if we're asking this lady, Julia, about, let's say, the crime, then we would just have it here. The red are answers that aren't as forthcoming. And then the black ones are the best answer that this person can give. The chisel is deciding how to answer this. So you can see there's a bunch of red. Those are not the best. And then there's some black here. This is the best answer that you can give to the detective that is asking. That gives you a brief overview. When you do decide, so if this was the fella right here, it shows numbers and letters right there. So you're going to look at the book, which was corresponding to the number and letter, and you're going to slot it here, so this is all they see, and then hand it to them. They will then have an option to say, hey, I don't think this was the best answer. If it was the best answer, you just tell them it was the best answer, and they will lose this resource. It looks like a hat. That gives you more leverage on them to decline questions, and then vice versa. If they are correct, then they will have leverage on this character, this suspect. And that means that they can spend that to get the best answer and guarantee they're going to get the best answer in the future when they ask this question of that suspect. There you go. That's a little update, or a little rules overview of Detective. So we're going to go back up top. All 4 of us are going to give our thoughts on this game.
Welcome back. Thank you so much, Nick, for the teach on this game. Obviously, we can't talk too much about the case details, so Nick was giving a very brief overview of how you play the different roles in this game, which I guess we could start off by talking about that in the game and how this game is played.
Okay.
Because you did give, obviously, an overview of it, but there are different modes for this.
Yeah, so we have 3 different levels of experience. So we have an easier ones that we start out with, and it gets intermediate, then it becomes more difficult. There's more twists and turns in the plot. It's harder to solve as the game goes on because you've learned more as you've played, which the game progresses with you. I like that. every time we feel like we want to know what's going to come to our way next. Because if it's going to get harder, it means it's going to get a little more interesting. But it didn't start out very disinteresting. I was involved. I felt it was good starting points when we first started. I was interested, and it just kept getting. I felt the game kept getting better. So a little spoiler: I do enjoy the game. Production, first thing jumps out, I think is solid for a game like this, where you're just going to probably play it through one time, most likely. If you are going to play it more than once, you're going to have to wait a few years to forget all the details of cases, so it's fair for everyone that you do play with.
Or a different group.
But you don't. Well, you want to wait a few years because you don't want to blow them out of the water because you're like, oh, you remember this, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So you want to wait a while if you're going to keep this game.
I like blowing people out of the water.
Or if you have a really awful memory.
Yeah, really bad memory. You can play them over
Your
again.
memory loss.
As long as you're
memory.
play this game, yeah.
Nothing outstanding with the production, but it is solid. I like the noir kind of feel to it. So, yeah, I think that's solid.
Yeah, I thought the production, just going off what you said right away, that looking at the game, you see that somebody has case details. They're playing a chisel role, and you and whoever else is playing is going to be doing the detective role. So, okay, so someone's going to be giving you information. You look at the production in front of you. It's a map, a big map of the entire California, I guess, area, or Los Angeles area. You're going to put your plastic figurine out, so the pieces are made of plastic. You have the chisel's got a well-produced, I'd say, paper kind of case. What is that? The clue slot, whatever that is, clue holder. So I thought the production was fair on the game. It looked noir-esque when you see it. You kind of get that theme vibe of it, that this is clearly a detective game, and you're right away brought with a story to start your each case that you're playing.
Gameplay. What do you think about gameplay?
Gameplay I thought was pretty interesting, depending on whether or not you were the detective or the chisel. As the detective, it's really easy. Like, your actions are very straightforward about what you're doing. And as the chisel, you're just kind of reacting to what everybody else does. So, but you have that kind of meta, like trying to get into the player's head. So depending on which role you're in, but I felt like gameplay was pretty quick. You're just taking your 4 actions. Half of those are typically moving, or you're staying at the same place asking questions or searching locations.
It's very straightforward actions. Like, I like that, too. You have, like, the cubes that you're going with your actions, so you can keep track of, like, okay, I already did this, I already did that. Like, I feel like it's very straightforward with actions.
Right. And for me, I really think I get in the feeling we're pretty big fans of like Chronicles of Crime. So I think of that same thing when you're asking people questions and then you learn something, you go back and ask them about some other item, and all of a sudden they might act a little differently or whatever that is.
Right.
So I get that same feel of like gameplay wise in that Chronicles of Crime mindset, and so but I really like just the setting. Of this, that's obviously different from Chronicles of Crime. But I really like how quick it is. There is like some strategy to it as well. I think that there's a good, like, you're not just going into it blind. Each game, there's you read through the little epilogue or whatever it is, the story, and it kind of gives you little pieces. Like, I should start here, but maybe I need to go to the crime scene, or maybe I really need to come over here. So I really like that it gives you some sense of direction instead of, here's a bunch of people, somebody died, whatever, go figure it out, kind of thing. Right. So I like that it gives you a little bit of direction. And even when you're playing with multiple people go in multiple directions. So you don't feel like you're just going the same place as everybody else is going. So I do like that as a way of like strategy in the gameplay.
Yeah, well, and I think in the gameplay too, especially like playing the chisel versus being the detectives, like it's a completely, obviously different way of thinking. But like, I found playing the chisel, like you said, I mean, it's more difficult, and like you're trying to hide certain things and not give too much away, but also not make it seem like it's obvious that you're hiding things. So it's interesting, the different roles.
Well, I think the one big mechanism that I really like in the gameplay is the use of leverage. Being able to catch people in lies, or trying to, lie to somebody, and all of a sudden you might get blocked for a question that you have in the future, or you can kind of really push people because you have leverage, and it's like, I want the best answer, you need to give me the best answer. Yeah. So I really like that mechanism of having leverage and that kind of push and pull you have with the chisel.
Right.
And there's a lot of like bluffing deception on both sides of it. Like if you're a chisel, you can bluff like something's really important you don't want people to know, and it really is not that important. Because you can like block things occasionally. It's like, you know what? Everyone's going to think this is huge. It's not.
Right.
And you can do it as a detective. You can bluff like you have critical information at a certain spot. Turns out it was bust. You know, there's ways to bluff and there's ways to make it interesting in that regard too. So I think the gameplay is actually pretty robust considering the limited actions you have.
Yeah.
I think there's quite a bit there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, you've got limited amounts of money or ways to get small amounts of cash from what you start with, and you have to make smart decisions about what you're ultimately going to spend money on, like to snitch on someone, bribe a detective, get access to their information, because you can see on the board that eventually maybe I or G or H is going to be revealed, but when? Can you wait? Or do you just want to know where are they going? Why do they, and if you follow somebody around, that's probably not the best way to play the game. So you really have to strategize. So I think there's good strategy to it.
Yeah. Return on investment for this one. For us, when I bought it, I can't remember how much I paid. I remember getting it on a good discount, but we played every single case through the game. There was no point that I felt like I was getting robbed of my money because I felt like every case was interesting. And we played at 4 players. For my experience, I'm happy with the purchase by far. I even got the, it would have been negative because I got the expansion before I knew if I even liked it. And I'm very happy I did. So we will probably be playing that soon. We probably won't have a review for that, but we'll probably get to that pretty soon because we enjoyed the game. Return on investment, I would say, is positive, but again, that's going to depend. I would think most players would like this game because I feel like each person felt like they were progressing through the game. They were learning. There was no stalemates. Oh, those were a bunch of wasted actions. No, you feel like you're learning things as the game goes. So that's a good, rewarding feeling. And you're learning things different than other people. Like you said, people aren't just following you around all game. You're going your own path because they gave you a decent amount of information to work with. And you just got to figure out who's lying, where's the most important spot at this moment.
Yeah, there's even times that somebody can get different information than what you got. So the chisel could give somebody an answer and then give somebody else a completely different answer, and you wonder, do I pay for that? With respect to the return on investment, I think that chisel role plays a key part in the replayability, because if you have the ability to, if you're, let's say, a solo gamer or the only person in your house that plays games, you can bring this out to different outings with people who don't know the case, but you, as the chisel, know the case. That's okay, because you can then play it so many more times over that way. Or if you have a memory issue, you could keep playing it with the same people that just don't get it or don't remember each time. But I think there is a return on investment there for that group of people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really have any investment. I think going into it, I had heard this was pretty highly praised by Z, I think, from the Dice Tower. He really liked this game. But I do like those detective games. And so I had no investment into it other than our time. But I do remember, like, every time we would play, I'd be like, man, that was a really good case. And every single one, they added a little twist, a little something different. And you're like, wait, okay, now there's this aspect to it. I won't spoil everything. But it was always interesting as we were playing, because I would be going about, I'm running with this lead that I think that I have, but then other people are asking questions, and I might see like 2 or 3 people huddled around the same suspect. I'm like, wait, do they know something that I don't know? Why is everyone intrigued by this individual? And nothing I have is leading me to them. So it is really interesting to watch what other people are doing and where they're going. And I don't really think that the cases necessarily got harder. Like, it was kind of based on perspective. Like, is this harder for the detectives or harder for the chisel? And so, but I think maybe just the mechanisms they throw in there make it harder, kind of thing. So I'm really excited to give the expansion a try, just because this one was a very pleasant surprise. I think we've only played it at 4 players, but I don't think I'd want to play it at less. I really like the 4-player game.
4 players seem pretty good.
Yeah, so I really like the amount of players that we played with it. But so obviously my return was high because I didn't invest.
Yeah, we didn't have any. I mean, it was just our time, like you said. But I felt like it was time well spent. Like, I mean, some of the games do take longer to get through, but I felt like it's time well spent because of you're invested in the story and like what's happening. And so and it's a different take on detective, like different than Chronicles of Crime.
Sure.
So it's a different take, which, you know, we like that theme. The whole like crime solving thing. So yeah.
And it takes a couple hours to play through, but every time we finished playing, I was always like, wow, did it really take 2.5 hours to play? I didn't feel like it, but I always felt like I didn't know we played that long.
Yeah.
At least for me, that was my perspective.
The downtime isn't bad, even when you're questioning people.
Right.
Unless all 4 of your actions are questioning, that might take a little bit.
Right.
But that's rare that it's going to happen, so you're going to want to mix up your actions. And I feel like, actually, the complexity doesn't really go up as far as there's no additional big rules you have to learn. So even though it feels like, oh, it's going to be hard because it's the hard-boiled case, it's not like, oh, I don't have to teach everyone new rules. You know, it's the same game. It just feels like maybe there's a little bit more winding, a little more deception on both sides. That's all I felt with the complexity, but no rules overhead, you know, like a lot of these games might have.
Yeah.
So we can go down the table, but what did you like, before we do scores, did you like being the chisel or the detective better?
It may have been so slightly detective, so slightly that it's like negligible. I'll be happy to be the chisel. There's plenty of gameplay there that I can receive and have fun. So I would say just slightly detective.
I think I like being the chisel. I like being that game master, getting to play games with people, leverage, giving people bad answers, or when they would challenge you and then find out that, no, that was the best answer. I don't know. There's something to that. But solving a case is cool too. But
What do you guys think? Same question.
I think I liked being the chisel too. I was just thinking about that. I like knowing what other people don't know, and I like being able to kind of guide the game in that way. I mean, I feel like it did take a while for me to kind of get into it, you know. But I think once I knew what I was doing, I was like, oh, I like this, you know. So
yeah, oh man, that's a tough question because I enjoyed both because I could see both sides, but I really like trying to put those puzzle pieces together. The only thing with the detective is sometimes I would find something crucial, but then I'd have to share the information a couple days later, and I didn't like that because I was like, I solved this puzzle, and you guys just get the information because I have to reveal it or whatever. And so because of that, I might give the edge to the chisel actually a little bit. But I do like the detective. I like the putting the pieces together and solving the whole thing.
Yeah,
right.
So for me, before we go into reviews, last thing about preparation. There's a very easy setup. The only preparation that's going to be there is for the chisel who has to read a story before. I will say that at first, maybe that doesn't sound very appealing, but as someone who doesn't read a bunch of fiction books, I read mostly nonfiction, I didn't feel like the reading was too much, like, oh, I'm getting bored already. Like, I actually, like, oh, this is an interesting little story, and it's well put together, it's an easy read, and it's interesting. So it keeps you in the story. You don't just fade off or go to sleep. It's like, okay, I'm interested, and it's not overbearing. It's not like a huge read. So I'm not going to even dock it for that. I think the preparation has actually been kind of fun.
Yeah, and I like that things are A, B, C, D, and you have that sheet, and it's pretty clear what each person is. So you don't go, who's Stacy? Or who?
It's pretty easy to retain the knowledge in this game. It doesn't add like 50 characters. You know, you have these set characters that you get to know pretty well right away.
Yeah.
I think the only thing is that now Van Ryder makes you pay for the audio, which is
that's a negative.
Yeah,
it's now on Foreteller. I think that's what they call it, Foreteller. Yeah.
I was just about to say that I like when we had the audio. Like, I mean, it like gets you more into the story.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a negative. I do really despise that they did that because it was with the game that I purchased, and all of a sudden you're going to upcharge and put it on an app that wasn't there when I purchased.
It should
I didn't
be
agree
included.
To this.
Yeah,
that was a thumbs
down.
Should
be.
So that might be the only negative that I have.
Then the whole when I would solve things, I'd have to share it. That's the only other thing. I'm like, you should have to figure this out yourself.
It's like a catch-up mechanism.
Yeah.
So Andrew, if he solved it a little quicker, then he would have a couple days to work with that extra knowledge, and then eventually people could get caught up.
It is cool how you are racing to solve it as detectives. It's not a cooperative game, but I don't know. Does the game have a cooperative mode? Okay, I didn't know because I thought I had read that there's a classic and a cooperative mode in it that you can do it, approach it differently. But I know that there's a mechanism when you go to solve it that you can try to do that first to win it, and then the chisel's also trying to win. So I think that's cool too. Just want to add that.
Score time?
Yeah, you can start if you want. Unless
for me, this is going to be a pretty high score. I'm going to give it 8-8. Sometimes I play these type of games that aren't traditional board games, and I kind of have the itch to play. Oh man, I really want to play like an actual board game, like a Euro. To me is an actual board game. This one Actually, I really enjoy it. So every time we're set up to play it, I'm excited for what's going to come because it's an experience every single level, and it's a game that improves with each play. So it's already starting out at a pretty solid footing, and it keeps getting better each time. So it never tapered off for me. I really enjoyed it. 8-8, my score.
Yeah, I'll give it the same at 8-6, very close to what Nick gave it. I enjoy games that usually are more heavy or there's more of a board game happening and you're doing your own strategy. But this game, despite having a story, which Nick and I are not the biggest story people, I was still interested. I wanted to get every detail down. And there is some guidance, as Andrew mentioned, with the game where you have some direction when you set out and play. So really appreciate that, and that we're not following everyone around. You have your own game experience. You can pay to listen in. You could decide to get involved and hear what that detective also heard, and you hope that someone challenges and gets you a better answer. There's just so much in it. So
Right.
yeah, 8-6.
I'm going to give it a 7.5. I really enjoyed it. I think for me, though, it did build. Like, it did get better just as we went on. And, I mean, the cases got, a little bit more difficult, but I was, more invested in, the stories. I felt like the stories, too, just kept getting better. And they were all different stories, too. That's what I liked. It wasn't, the same thing over and over again, So 7.5.
This is a no-brainer for me. This was easily a 9. I really like this game. I'm
not surprised.
Even when they showed up today and they had I was like, "Did you bring the expansion?"
Yeah.
I want to play it. It's the added cases. I don't even know what this expansion brings, but every time I play it, I was always like, "Man, that was really good."
Yeah.
And I like the experience. I like the player count. Everything was really good. Even though there's a couple of those little negative things, but it's just such a good game. It's such a great experience to have. And it leaves me wanting to come back and play more. Now, I mean, yes, I rated it really high. Eventually, I won't play it anymore because we'll have played everything. But, man, for what it is, and we played it 12 times, I think, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really, really good. So it's a 9 for me.
And we've all won our rounds. We've all won the game, different scenarios. So it's not like somebody's just constantly winning because they're better at the game, and it's like some games.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we pretty much okay, they won. At one point, we all went in order. If we won, we all had 1 win apiece, and then maybe even 2 wins apiece. So that was pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Well, that's our review of Detective City of Angels. Let us know what detective game you've enjoyed lately in the comments below, and like the video if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching.
Goodbye.
See ya!